everyone. And to those who have joined us or joining us back from this morning, welcome back. Welcome to the Juneteenth for Algorithmic Liberation, an AI Symposium hosted by Flatiron School. My name is Patricia Rodriguez. I am the events manager here, and we're very excited to have you all with us today for this exploration of the power of artificial intelligence with a specific focus on ethics, fairness, and the impact that it has on marginalized communities. So if you do not know about Flatiron School, let's change that right now. Flatiron School has been a leader in the bootcamp industry since 2012. And we've provided education to help people learn in-demand skills in software engineering, data science, cybersecurity, and product design. Here at Flatiron School, we believe that education is the best investment that you can make for your future. And we're pretty much committed in changing the lives and making the world a better place with programs that are designed for total beginners. We believe in that no matter the background or your previous education, you should be able to gain new skills in tech and start a new career or a new life. So at Flatiron School, for us, diversity and inclusion really matters, which is why we developed this event to continue empowering historically marginalized communities through the creation of dialogue that will drive change in the tech space. So by raising awareness about the presence of AI, the presence of bias in AI and its potential consequences, we really hope that you participants will not only feel empowered to advocate for algorithmic justice, but that you do so in technological and societal context. So earlier today, we kicked off the event with a wonderful keynote announcement by Marlon Fuentes, who is an AI product marketing specialist with over 7 years of expertise in immersive technology. And during his announcement, he stressed the power that we have right now to narrate our future and the importance of addressing the current issues in AI to ensure that it serves everyone equitably. Then we got a data 101 or like a data justice 101 crash course that was led by Ethan Castro, who is a sophomore at Baruch College and who has pretty much placed himself in the center of the AI world due to his personal interest. And his session pretty much set a foundation for the rest of the event by providing a foundational understanding of data collection, processing, and decision-making in AI. And what kind of different types of bias are present. Lastly, we ended the earlier half of this session with a unpacking bias in data and AI algorithms course that was led by our Flatiron School instructor, Angelica or Jelly Spratley. Jelly holds a master in analytics from North Carolina State University and has had extensive experience in data consulting. And with several years in the field, she uses her time to instruct and mentor students on the ethical use of data and the proper modeling techniques. So during our session, we got to deep dive into various sources of bias in AI and their impacts on AI algorithms and decision-making processes through interesting case studies. So no worries if you missed any of the earlier sessions. It was recorded and it will be available after the event. We'll be sending those out to participants. So now for this later half, we're switching things a little bit. So to kick us off, we have Laura Montoya, who is the founder of Latinx in AI, who's going to share with us information about her organization. Advocating for data justice also includes joining initiatives and organizations that are frontrunners in the conversation of advocacy and AI innovation. So I hope that this session serves as that, and definitely tune in for that session as you will learn more about them. And then at 5, we will have a panel discussion named Ethical Horizons in AI, which is all about navigating consent, privacy, and just the impacts that AI has currently, or AI deployment has right now on society as a whole. And we will have speakers from Pearson, Hack Diversity, and more who will be joining us. So that conversation will start at 5 o'clock. So if for any reason you guys need to jump off and you're more interested in the later conversation, you can join back in at 5 o'clock. So we are currently waiting for Laura to join us. So once she will join us, we will get started. So let's hold on tight for a second and we'll get started soon. Thank you so much. We have more people in the waiting room, which is awesome. Let's have more people join us. Just a few more moments. Right, so Laura has joined us. We're just going to give her a few moments to start sharing her screen and we'll get started. Thank you so much for your patience, guys.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Patricia. Thank you for the invitation. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Give me a moment here.
Thank you.
Okay, and just confirm you can see my screen.
Yes, sorry.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So thank you very much for the invitation today to present about the Latinx and AI organization. We appreciate our friends at Flatiron School for hosting this particular session for Juneteenth and around this really important subject of algorithmic bias in artificial intelligence. This is an issue we think a lot about in our organization, Latinx and AI, and it's a topic that I'm going to cover a little bit in depth here, but I know you've already had several talks that go really deep into the issues around bias and some areas of how to mitigate it. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about how our organization focuses on this topic and what resources we've made available to help try to solve some of these problems to get more underrepresented people in artificial intelligence, and for those that are already working in the space to also find representation in this space as well. So today's presentation is called Emerging AI, Unleashing the Potential of Latinx and AI, or Latin Americans in Artificial Intelligence. Some of the topics I'm going to cover include our mission, timeline of our organization, our membership forum and how to join, our research publications, our Latin American venture partnership, some of our research workshops, which are part of our programming, our mentorship program, our Journal of Latinx and AI Research, and our supercomputer network. So a lot of information I'm going to go over quickly, and of course, I'm happy to answer any questions at the end of this session. Some information about myself for those who are new to me. I'm happy to give you some details. My background originally is as a research scientist. I studied biology and physical science, and I transitioned into software engineering. I was working at Intuit in Mountain View as a software engineer for some time, and then from there, I decided to become an entrepreneur. Excuse me, I started a couple companies, and from there, I decided to become an angel investor. I work with a lot of different organizations, including several that are my own, the Excel Impact Fund or firm, Excel AI Institute, which I represent, and I'm also the president of the Latinx and AI organization. I'm also a research affiliate with the Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society at Harvard Law, and a mentor for the IBM Hyperprotect Accelerator program, helping to mentor startups as well, working within the space, in particular, those that are using artificial intelligence and machine learning in their products. This focus, of course, is going to be on the Latinx and AI organization. And so this organization has a mission to create opportunity for Latinx or Latin Americans working within artificial intelligence. We are a volunteer-led organization, so all of the programming that we do is of course run by our community members, and we're really appreciative to have their support in hosting our sessions and to giving back to the more global community. The types of initiatives that we have really try to support engineering, research, and startup initiatives. So I'll talk a little bit more in depth about how our programming supports each of these different aspects as well. We do have a mentoring platform, as I mentioned, and our goal is really to nurture a continuing relationship with academia, industry, and governments. So in this way, we really are trying to develop an ecosystem for the organization and for our community members so that there is a consistent conversation that goes between all of these entities to try to create that support and those opportunities long-term and globally. One of our goals is to increase representation at global conferences. This is done in part by our research workshops. And we also have a job openings network, which allows those individuals who are looking for new career opportunities to connect with our corporate partners who have jobs that are available that want to, of course, hire for more diverse individuals. We also try to further career development through hosting things like doctoral symposiums. We have our research journal for this topic, which I'll go into. And we really try to help mentor people on what it takes to get to the next level in their career. And of course, we help to support infrastructure access, and part of this is done through our supercomputer network program, which I'll talk about in a moment. And the Latinx and AI organization is, of course, fiscally sponsored by the XLAI Institute, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. So all of our initiatives are hosted under this umbrella. And any one that gets involved with our organization or any corporates that sponsor us, of course, can keep this in mind as far as they're working with us. So our goals have remained the same essentially since we started as an organization to bridge communities, academics, industry, and politicians working to further AI innovation and resources for Latin American individuals globally. So although we started in San Francisco, we have really expanded broadly to over 6,000 members now globally. Of those, the demographic breakdown is about 40% based in the US. So we do have a very strong foothold, in particular in places like California, Texas, and New York. We also have a strong membership base, of course, in Latin America. So our strongest membership base in Latin America comes from countries like Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, Peru, and we're also expanding, of course, further into different countries in the area. So that takes about 55% of our demographic base from those 6,000 members are from people in Latin America itself. And then the other 5% consists of people who are living and working in other countries. So that includes in Europe. We have several members in the UK, in Spain. We also have some members located in Asia. So it just depends if they're working on their PhD at another university or if they're working for a company that's located abroad. And here's a little bit of the timeline about our organization. So we started in 2018, as I mentioned, in San Francisco, really with the focus on launching for community awareness. So we started with a town hall session to find out what it was like for people who identified as Latin American or Latinx that were either wanting to get into artificial intelligence or who were working in the space, and what they saw potentially as barriers in artificial intelligence, what they needed, and what an organization like ours could do to essentially provide opportunities for them to grow within their careers and beyond working in AI. And then from there, we decided to get this focus on research workshops. And we did that because we found that especially in artificial intelligence, a lot of the innovation that happens comes through originally from research and publications. So we started connecting with some major and really prestigious AI academic conferences, places like the Neural Information Processing Systems Conference or the Computer Vision and Pattern Recognition Conference, because we wanted to ensure that we had a foothold there and that we had representation, and we can provide that through a global membership base at these different events. In 2020, we decided to launch our mentorship program and take on more opportunities for leadership within our organization. So now we have chapters that are broken up into different areas of AI. So for example, we have the Latinx and computer vision chapter, we have a Latinx and natural language processing chapter, we have a Latinx and robotics chapter. So no matter what area of artificial intelligence you're interested in, these are different areas and chapters that you could get involved in as well as a leader rather than just as a participant. In 2021, we decided to evolve the organization a little bit more and expand our online programs So from there, we have a new forum. We have new opportunities for people to connect, to have speaking opportunities. And we're starting to connect now more with the startup community in 2021. And then by 2022, we decided to develop our infrastructure program that includes the supercomputer network program, which I'll talk about more later on. And we, of course, decided to mature a lot of the other programs that we already have in place. And finally, in 2023, a new forum again, community engagement, and that serious startup focus. So now we're really starting to invest in startups and really help entrepreneurs who are taking AI companies or AI models and turning them into companies. And from there, we're just looking to expand, up and outwards, as you can see by that rocket ship. So one of the main things I've talked about here is the member directory and forum. So this is really the best place to connect online with our community. We launched this forum in order to facilitate that communication between our members for resource sharing, for events, essentially for anything that we know will connect members online. So here we have it broken down into categories, and we have profiles available for our members so you can get to know them a little bit more. For us, we also publish a lot of research. So when we do research within our organization, it isn't just research on AI itself, but oftentimes it's research about the community. So I'm going to highlight a few of our research projects to help you better understand the Latin American artificial intelligence community, what those barriers are, and how we can essentially help to solve problems for our community members. This is a paper that we originally published in 2019 at the IEEE International Symposium on Technology in Society. This focus was on government AI readiness, and it was a meta-analysis for Latin America and the Caribbean. So we wanted to find out, in particular, what was happening for governments who were considering implementing artificial intelligence technology or better supporting AI initiatives within their economies, within their government, and for their citizens. And part of the impetus for this particular research was because we found that there was a 2019 government AI readiness ranking that was developed for Latin American and Caribbean countries. And through that ranking, we found that there were many challenges that were developed for harnessing artificial intelligence for the common good in Latin America. Some of those things were around policies. Many countries at that time in 2019 had not put out official policies in the development of artificial intelligence or in AI regulation, privacy, data practices. And so this is something that was really lacking at that time for many countries. And so as you could see, a lot of the rankings for these countries were fairly low. There's also the ability to have adequate resources and capacity for developing AI. So in particular, you saw some countries really stand out. Countries like Mexico, Brazil, Uruguay, Chile, and Colombia, they have been kind of on the forefront, essentially, in the development of artificial intelligence as compared to other countries. And if you look at the global average here for the ranking, which is 4.032, you can see that those countries really ranked highly as compared to the global average. But there are many countries within Latin America that ranked fairly low as compared to the global average. And the Latin American and Caribbean average was only 3.682. So significantly lower than the global average. And a lot of these reasons, again, is because the governments were not thinking about artificial intelligence at that time. They had not put adequate resources or the capacity behind that. When I say capacity and when I say resources, what I'm talking about are things like funding for research and development, capacity being access to hardware or cloud infrastructure for doing AI development, and then also general training in things like engineering practices and research publications in order to compete in a global marketplace. So when we decided to develop our government AI readiness ranking pillars, we looked at originally 11 input metrics, and these were grouped under 4 high-level clusters. So they looked at things like governance, like privacy laws and AI strategy, skills and education, things like digital skills, innovation capability, and AI startups, where there are already some that were being funded or developed within the region, whether there was infrastructure and data available, so things like open source data, data capability, advanced technology products, and then government and public services that are focused on developing artificial intelligence. So things like government effectiveness, digital public services, information and communication technologies. And so one of the major takeaways from this particular ranking that we found was that There was a saying by Fabrizio Scroloni, who's the executive director of the Latin American Open Data Initiative, also known as ILDA, in 2019. He said that countries should really consider automating with caution because the way forward is still uncertain. And if you think about that, it was several years ago now, that's how everyone felt around AI, right? People were scared of AI taking away jobs. There was a lot of trust issues around the implementation of artificial intelligence, even for things like self-driving cars, and there still is today, right? The common person, unless they are aware that AI is incorporated into the technology that they're using, like through a cell phone or their computer, then they really don't know what AI is when you ask them, especially the average citizen within Latin America itself. And so we wanted to look a little bit deeper within our study about what were the potentials for Latin American and Caribbean automation potentials and risks. So when we looked at each individual country, we wanted to go a little bit deeper around issues for economic development, problem-solving capabilities, increased access to programs and services, and also record digitization and data collection. All of these things would allow for more advancement in artificial intelligence or machine learning, where there are also a lot of risks that have to be considered. So at the time, as I mentioned, people were thinking about issues around doing artificial intelligence. So these risk considerations were things like robot automated machinery density, job loss, increased surveillance, and hyperinflation. And hyperinflation in particular for countries within Latin America is a very serious issue that is already disrupting many economies. So this could only be exacerbated through the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning products, and something that has to be really considered when incorporating this type of technology in an emerging market, such as many of these countries. And so when we conducted our meta-analysis, we decided to look at some additional economic metrics to answer some questions, like how could this original ranking be improved? What economic factors were originally missed? And where does that leave Latin American countries in the global AI race? Those factors that we looked at included the unemployment rate by the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, the gross domestic product per capita purchasing power parity, which is posted by the Central Intelligence Agency CIA World Factbook, the cost to hire an AI researcher, which you can get from Stack Overflow. At that time, we took the 2018 developer survey, and the education level of individuals within that country, which we took from the UN Education Index. And of course, we were really happy to see that even since that ranking, the original producers of the government AI readiness ranking decided to also improve their standings on this particular topic. So they did a new ranking with 39 indicators across 10 dimensions, which make up 3 main pillars. And there are still 5 countries that really stand out in Latin America. And those include, of course, Brazil, Chile, Uruguay, Colombia, and Argentina that rank the highest. So you can see some of the countries changed in the high ranking. In particular, Argentina rose up, which is really interesting. And as you can see, Mexico is now missing in the top 5. And so part of the reasons for that is because there is an additional investment that has taken place and additional policies as well that have been put in place by governments who are interested in working in artificial intelligence and having AI incorporated into their economies. So now we know that the main takeaway from this research is that each country is only as prepared to take advantage of AI technology as its government and citizens will allow. So there has to be a lot of trust that is factored in by citizens and by the government to really further this technology. And once you have that trust in place, then you'll see investment and policy and a lot of strategy also put in place that will carry that artificial intelligence development forward. And since then, we actually have a new paper that we have published recently called AI Thrust, Ranking Emerging Powers for Tech Startup Investment in Latin America. This was actually published this beginning of this year. And the focus is, of course, now in investing in artificial intelligence startups. And we wanted to identify key countries that we think would be emerging for artificial intelligence investment, right? So as I mentioned, there are or have been about 5 top countries that essentially have most of the policies, most of the resources, most of the trust and access in AI in Latin America. And we wanted to ensure that there were opportunities for new countries that were coming up to also have investment while mitigating risk for investors. So we developed this new Latin American AI investment ranking. And we looked at several different factors to be included within this topic. So things like infrastructure, education, finance. And of these different countries, we found these countries were here in the red box were the ones that are really considered emerging now within this area for investments. So the countries that get the most investments previously include countries like Brazil, Mexico, Chile, and Argentina. And those that are up and coming and really going to be well known for investments in AI include Colombia, Uruguay, the Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, Ecuador, and Panama. And some of the reasons for this, I'll go a little bit deeper into the infrastructure elements that we looked at. We knew that infrastructure is really important because this is the cornerstone of AI development. By implementing infrastructure, having additional access to infrastructure, you can provide diverse opportunities for investors and for AI implementation. You can drive access to computational power. You can provide the hardware needed for AI development, and you can ensure the efficient execution of AI. So we looked at these infrastructure elements, including these indicators: access to electricity, access to internet, urban internet penetration, rural internet penetration, the internet speed for fixed broadband, and the internet speed for mobile, and HPC, which is high-powered computing system availability throughout the country. We also looked at the education elements, as I mentioned, because this is a vital component of AI investment readiness. We wanted to know that there was a presence of experts in the field of artificial intelligence and that their education level was high enough for them to actually produce AI. So for this element, we looked at the tertiary education penetration and whether there were research articles and patents being published within each country on AI topics. And from a financial perspective, we looked at different aspects for startup penetration. What was the cost of the tech labor market? So the median computer science salary within artificial intelligence in the area. If there were AI strategies that have been developed, how much AI investment is already flowing to the country? Excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold. And then the country economic status as well. So things like the GDP, what an individual can essentially purchase, their purchasing power from within that country, and the GDP, the gross domestic product output for each in particular area of innovation. And then AI implementation across the organization for AI adoption as well. And we looked at a few individual case studies that show some companies that have been able to innovate through economic collapse, partially due to their use of artificial intelligence. So some of these you might be familiar with, like Mercado Libre. They were founded just before the major economic crisis in Argentina in 2001. And today they're one of the biggest marketplaces in Latin America. There's also the Banco Vision Fund. So this particular organization was founded in Ecuador in 1995, and it was able to recover from the 1995 El Nino crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic. And today it's one of the most important banks in Ecuador. And they do incorporate a lot of AI, data science, and machine learning into their products as a bank. And finally, the CINDE, Invest in Costa Rica, nonprofit organization. This was created to increase foreign investment in Costa Rica during the economic decline in 1982. And today is one of the top 10 organizations in America that generates employment from within the region. So some really great case studies that we were able to cover in that particular research project. And so to go a little bit more into our Latin American Ventures Partnership, this is a collaboration between the Latinx AI organization and the Excel Impact Ventures. Our goal here is to invest in the future with Emerging Markets Fund for Latin American entrepreneurs. And so part of what we're doing is we're thinking about how AI can be combined with other deep tech innovation. Things like infinite computing, biotechnology, robotics, space tech, clean tech, health tech, solar tech, GPUs, and mobility. If you can take those areas of deep technology innovation and combine them with increasing capabilities of AI systems, things like handwriting recognition, image recognition, speech recognition, language understanding, really, you know, the future is unstoppable for these two different areas. And we know, and we've learned over time, that investment in deep tech startups just grows while capital and time required for development drops. So deep tech innovation plus AI creates this virtuous cycle, essentially, so that the cheaper, more powerful innovation tools, as they become available, They allow for more agile techniques, accelerating innovation cycles, which creates a shorter time to market and exposure. Exposure to the Death Valley might happen sooner, or it might not happen at all. And then there's a lower innovation cost, a growing number of success cases, more capital and grant availability. This creates more deep tech platforms reaching tipping points and larger addressable markets. And so on and so forth. This causes this deep tech innovation cycle to grow. And so you might be wondering, well, why haven't we heard of many companies out of Latin America that are working in AI who have become unicorns or who have raised over $100 million? Well, the fact is actually you probably have. So I'm sure most people on this call today are generally use or are familiar with Duolingo for learning a new language. This particular company was founded by a Latinx entrepreneur. It, of course, uses a lot of artificial intelligence and machine learning technology. It is one of the most well-known and used apps that most people have access to today. If you're on the engineering side, you likely also work with Auth0. Auth0 was developed specifically to help the authentication process for those who developed engineering products, or otherwise known as developers, who want to connect or set up a login system for people on the go. So Auth0 has now also raised over 100 million, a really well-known company if you are an engineer. Similarly, if you're in the startup side, you likely have heard of or already use Brex, which is an AI-powered banking platform, which also particularly works for and with startups to ensure they have access to capital. And these are just a few examples of companies that have gone on to raise a lot of money within the space. But the funny thing is that in 2020, US Latinos generated approximately 2.8 trillion in GDP. So that's 13% of the US gross domestic product. If US Latinos were a country, it would be the 5th largest GDP in the world, growing faster than the US economy. So if you let that sink in and realize that Latinos in the US are actually giving more to the economy itself, yet they still receive less than 1% of all venture capital funding for tech businesses. So that's the amount that went to Latinos in the US in 2021. And when you think about Latin American companies, whether you're working in Latin America or you're working in the US, over half of companies surveyed in Latin America are exploring AI. And this is a fact that came from the IBM Global AI Adoption Index. And over 1/3 of Latin American companies have incorporated AI-enabled solutions into their services. So thinking that Latin Americans are behind is something that is not true. It's not a thing of the past. This is something that Latin Americans are actively working on, whether on an individual basis or from a company perspective. And so there is an organization that we work with called Lupa. They have this large language model social listening tool that they utilize essentially to get insights on different topics that you might be interested in. And we asked them recently, can you give us some insights on artificial intelligence in Latin America? What is the general feeling? I talked a lot about earlier that you have to have understanding of AI, that you have to have trust in the technology in order for it to move forward. Well, these were some of the main issues that were brought up when they did their study with this LLM social listening tool. The main topics that people are thinking about are, of course, the competition for artificial intelligence, AI regulation as a really big piece, especially for issues that we're talking about today for Juneteenth and bias in artificial intelligence development, and then the outlook in artificial intelligence in general. And so these can be broken down further into the impact on the payment sector, integration in AI in the judicial system, dangers it represents for upbringing and education of children, which I think hasn't been covered as much today, applications in small businesses, sustainable development, innovation in business, and participation in international events. So again, people in Latin America are still really thinking about using AI and also how to incorporate this technology into their schools, into their education systems, and into their businesses moving forward. And from the investment side, Latin America is one of the fastest growing regions for venture funding. So, in 2021, as I mentioned, only 1% of venture capital funding went to Latin America. And that is essentially an estimated $19.5 billion. When the average person hears $19.5 billion, they might think, oh, wow, that's a lot of money. But actually, It's only 1%. So it's a very small amount. And yet still we have many Latin American unicorns that have been developed. So for example, we have 19 unicorns that have come from Brazil. We have 9 unicorns that have come from Mexico. And some of these, which I already mentioned earlier, such as Auth-O, Brex. We also have ones like Nubank, you might be familiar with. Rappi from Colombia is another good example. These are all great companies doing wonderful work, many of which are utilizing AI technology. And if you're considering developing AI or partnering with companies or investing in companies that are using AI within this space, it's better to really understand the ecosystem. So we did a little breakdown here, and we found out that there were 340 Latinx deep tech startups with institutional funding, including 14 countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. There's also 98 deep tech startups worth over 10 million, with 3 worth over 500 million. So that's quite significant, even in the general startup market. There's 65 local and international funds and accelerators investing in deep tech in Latin America and the Caribbean, which is really great to know that a company can get a head start when they're starting from within one of these countries. And the value of the current Latin American and Caribbean AI and deep tech ecosystem is currently 8 billion. There's also 2 billion in current capital raised by Latin American and Caribbean AI and deep tech startups, and a 44 times growth potential of AI and deep tech VC investments from between 2020 and 2022. And you might be wondering, well, what are these companies doing? What area of focus are they in, or what area of innovation are they in? And so we broke down the percentage of Latin American and Caribbean and deep tech startups by sector. And we found that most of the companies are actually working within the biotech sector, so about 61%, and then about 11% in pure artificial intelligence, or things like foundational models. There's also a large percentage working in nanotechnology, clean tech, space tech, mobility, and then of course, on the kind of outliers would include things like health tech, manufacturing, connectivity, blockchain, robotics, materials design, and medical devices. And there's a lot of advantages of working with Latin American talent pool as well, because people are so highly educated, in particular from those major and emerging markets that we talked about earlier. So there's a 5 to 10% savings of talent costs for Latin American and Caribbean AI deep tech startups. There's about 10,000 people working in Latin America and Caribbean AI deep tech startups. And then there's 871,000 people doing STEM, or science, technology, engineering, and math research and development in Latin America and the Caribbean, and about 5,000 people doing research and development in Latin America and Caribbean AI and deep tech startups as well. So plenty of people to collaborate with. And the impact of artificial intelligence and deep tech on Latin America and the economy is just expansive. So there's about 100 times potential long-term growth for Latin American deep tech ecosystem. There's about a 7% increase expected GDP from generative AI and deep technology innovation in the next decade, and about 100 billion potential additional annual exports of knowledge-based services leveraging artificial intelligence in the next 10 years. So this can really drive opportunity for job growth, and of course for these economies to grow and prosper over the next 10 years. And for those that are not very familiar with private equity or the startup life cycle, I can go really quickly into this as well. So essentially, what our organization, Latinx and AI, does currently is we focus a lot on this left-hand side. We provide things like grants for lab research, for people to come and to present their work at major conferences, as I mentioned. And this covers things like concept generation, analytical proofs, fundamental research, and intellectual property design. Well, when you start getting to the investment side, you go into what's called pre-seed or seed stage. And this is really where you get investments for things like product development and deployment, for things like real world testing, commercial demos, proof of concepts, users, and some revenue, right? You would expect a company to be at this stage. This is where we would make an initial investment from our partnership with Excel Impact at the 100,000 to 1 million level, depending on the particular company, what it is, the product that they developed, the intellectual property, and the team itself. And then from there, as the company grows, you would get to what's considered a series A, B, C, or D. And this is where a company would find its go-to-market, product market fit, and it would have things like a product in production, software in production, or models in production. It would be a full in operation. It would be recruiting a new talent for new skills, and then also entering into new markets, expanding globally. And then finally, the last stage of this startup life cycle is, of course, the exit, because that's how investors make a return, as well as that's how the founders make a real return on their investment. They would exit through a merger and acquisition or an IPO going on the public market. And this is usually when a company does commercialization, partner integration, and they would scale their technology. And so if you want to learn more about this partnership, you can also visit our website for Excel Impact Venture Capital. This is our new initiative, as I mentioned, our fund to invest in AI and deep tech companies led by Latin American and Latinx identified entrepreneurs. And in the future, we're also planning to invest in other emerging markets. And when looking at this, of course, we also found that a lot of the issues that emerging market startups typically lack access to is the same things that researchers lack access to and engineers lack access to, things like access to capital, partnerships, mentors, data, computational power, and infrastructure, so that they can succeed in the global market. And that's a lot of what our programming already does and provides for our members. So we have a global network through Latinx and AI, and this includes investors, governments, corporations, universities, nonprofits, startups, and technologists around the world for things like partnerships, funding, mentorship, market growth, sourcing, and recruiting. And so the first step in connecting to our ecosystem or our environment, as I mentioned earlier, is our Latinx and AI members directory and forum. So we are opening up this forum, not just for researchers and engineers, but also for startups, because we want to ensure that startups have a place as well if they're turning their artificial intelligence ideas into companies. And so I'm going to go a little bit deeper into our programming. I know I don't have a ton of time left, but I want to ensure that I cover this as well. From the Latinx and AI research side, one of our main program initiatives is to host these research workshops. Essentially, what you can do when you think about these research workshops is they're like meta-level conferencing. So it's like a conference within a conference where we host a full day's sessions where we have people who have submitted their research papers that undergo a program committee review process. So we look at those research papers for quality. We want to ensure that the innovation that they are trying to publish on is actually something that is impactful, it is unique, and they are furthering science within the area of artificial intelligence, machine learning, computer vision, natural language processing, and so on. And one of the major things that we do is we provide grants for our members to come and attend these conferences. So we cover things like the cost to attend, the registration, the visa fees, travel accommodation, and per diem. And of course, we invite and highlight members of our community to come and give talks for keynote sessions, for doctoral consortiums, as I mentioned. We often have tutorials as well for people that want to learn what is the latest that's happening in AI. And yes, as I mentioned, we also have this conference grant fund where we have awarded over 1,100 conference and travel registration grants to members of our community. And this is, of course, made possible by our workshop sponsors. So we have a lot of partnerships with major corporations over the years since 2018, which include companies like Google, Meta, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, DeepMind, Intel, Capital One, Salesforce, NVIDIA, Adobe, DE Shaw, Two Sigma, MathWorks. And we want to ensure that essentially we are also thanking them for their contribution to being part of our membership. And they don't just support us financially, they also send mentors to take part in our mentorship program, and they give advice through roundtables at all of our sessions as well. So it's a really great opportunity to connect with these major companies if you are looking to further your career development when you're working with us or attending our sessions. And I know I've brought up our mentorship program a few times here, so let's dive a little bit deeper into this. Our mentorship program is developed to match early career Latinx professionals with expert mentors in the field, many of which, as I mentioned, come from those major corporations that do support us annually. But many of them also come from universities, so many are professors. But you can also be a mentor if you are a PhD student and you want to mentor, for example, someone that is finishing their bachelor's. So many opportunities to both get mentored and become a mentor and give back to the community. And so why do we need AI mentorship program like this? Well, not everyone has access to experienced mentors for research, engineering, and business solutions. As I mentioned, a lot of governments earlier do not invest enough in artificial intelligence. And while most Latin American countries rate highly on the education index, many Latin American and Caribbean governments do not invest enough in this area of research and development. So we found that there is this phenomenon called brain drain that happens, that once a person reaches a certain level of education or expertise, they tend to leave their home country, right, in seeking new opportunities. And so when this happens, unfortunately, it leaves a gap of that mentorship, and the younger generations do not see that there are people that have already come up that have achieved a lot within these areas, but because now they're living abroad, they're not available to help give back. So we try to fill that gap. And some of the barriers we found for Latin American mentees from within our network are that they are unaware of their options. They have that local expertise limitation, as I mentioned. They have encouragement gaps. Maybe their family members have never finished a high-level degree like this, or they've never worked in an area like artificial intelligence or machine learning. They don't understand what it is. So they can't encourage their family members to go into this line of work. There's also a lot of language differences when someone starts working with an American company or company in the UK or in Canada. They have to essentially find how to overcome that hurdle. And then there are financial hurdles, right, to getting to these major venues for artificial intelligence development. And they tend to lack those local role models. So the benefits of our mentoring program is that we do match people for specialization, career level, time zone, and language preference. We offer things like research guidance, accountability, immigration and application advising, and of course, a platform to connect and amplify their work. And so this could be whether you're applying for a PhD program, if you're applying for a new job, or if you're just looking to develop further research and you want, an expert opinion on, how to, let's say, tune your hyperparameters, or how to find a new data set that would work better for a particular problem you're trying to solve. And so we're able to offer this through our mentor matching algorithm that we developed internally. Essentially, it's just an automated matching system that looks at the intersects between these different specializations, as I mentioned, and interests of the mentee and mentor. And that is also available on our GitHub if you're interested in looking at the algorithm itself, and going more in depth. And so this particular program is the 3-month program. It's done virtually. It is free for our mentors and mentees. And so we do match them for essentially 3 months for one-on-one sessions through something like Zoom or Google Meet, whatever they feel most comfortable with. And we do ask then that they do have some questions prepared in advance for those mentees and mentors to connect and to try to solve the problems that the mentees have. Oftentimes our mentors, especially those that come from major corporations, are actually using this opportunity to get to know potential new hires. So it is a great opportunity as well for someone who's coming up within their career to connect essentially with those that are more advanced, to essentially start working at their company in the future. We do encourage those mentees to improve their outcomes over time. And if they are, of course, looking to present at our conferences, that they do practice, and then, of course, use our platforms as a way to publish, whether that be at a conference or through our Journal of Latinx and AI Research. Here's some quick testimonials from people who have participated in our sessions. So Stephanie Meza here, she was actually a high school student when she participated, and she said that she learned a lot about the intro to machine learning and AI, and she enjoyed having discussions with her mentor. She thought it was really insightful, and she felt like she could reach out to him and ask more questions in the future. Well, that was a few years ago, and Stephanie has actually gone on now to get into Stanford, and she is now studying artificial intelligence and machine learning full-time at Stanford, which is really exciting as well. Here is Gabriel Francisco Lemos. He was a graduate student when he participated in our mentorship program, and he said that the mentor meetings were crucial for planning his next steps towards a PhD project, and that it was really meaningful for him. And Nicolas Araque, who is a professor of engineering, actually, from Venezuela, he said that this mentoring program was a game changer for his career. In the 2 months that he worked with his mentor, he went from not knowing how to handle research writing to actually publishing a full paper. And so he was really appreciative of the Latinx community, in particular his mentor, Victor, for this wonderful opportunity. So a little bit more about the breakdown of where we host our sessions. These include all major academic machine learning and AI conferences. As I've mentioned before, some of the ones that we've hosted at this year included RIA, which actually takes place in Ecuador or Mexico every other year. The Wisdom Conference, which is the Web Search and Data Mining Conference. iClear is the International Conference on Learning Representations. ICRA is the first robotics conference we ever hosted at, so the International Conference on Robotics and Automation. CVPR is the Computer Vision Pattern Recognition Conference. This week actually is taking place, CVPR and NACL, which is I always forget this acronym. So it's, I think, the National Association of Automated Computational Linguistics. That's happening in Mexico City this week. CVPR is taking place in Seattle this week. And upcoming, we also have the International Conference on Machine Learning, which will be taking place in Vienna, Austria. We also just had the FACT Conference, which is the Fairness, Accountability, and Transparency Conference that took place in Rio, Brazil. We are currently wrapping up our spring mentorship program, but we will have our fall mentorship program available soon. And we will be hosting at some additional conferences throughout this year, including potentially ACL, ECCV, which is also in computer vision, ICARM, which is another robotics conference. And of course, to end the year, our largest event will be at the Neural Information Processing Systems Conference in December. So if you're looking to join us for any of those sessions, we really hope that you do. And I'll talk a little bit about our Journal of Latinx AI Research. This particular journal was developed in order to index all of the papers that were presented at our workshops at these major AI and machine learning conferences. We wanted to have an official publication and proceedings to ensure that essentially researchers get accredited for the work that they are doing. And so we assign them official DOIs, which are document object indexes, so that they can build their H index, which is needed for researchers to essentially show that other people are reading and citing their work over time, and they can get credit for that. So our journal is searchable by topic, author, conference, and so on. All of the published papers there are peer reviewed. And this is an open source site, and we have open access copyright guidelines. That means that the authors maintain full ownership of their work. We will not redistribute or sell any of their research or work. We want to make sure the owners maintain that right and that access. And so if you're interested in looking into our journal, we do encourage people to submit papers here, and then to also take advantage of it as a resource for learning more about AI and the AI that is being done from the Latin American community. We currently have a call for papers for rolling submissions. If you want to submit your work, you can access that as well through this QR code. And if you're interested in being an editor or on the editorial board for this particular research journal, we do have editorial board positions available as well. So if you're interested in doing that, you can also message me and we could talk a little bit about the responsibilities for the editorial board and what that would look like moving forward. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we do have the Latinx AI Supercomputer Network. The objectives of this particular program is to strengthen the capacities of Latinx artificial intelligence ecosystem by providing things like computational power. So we know that the demand for GPU access has just increased significantly over the years since AI technology has been advancing, in particular because of the onset of deep learning. And so the need for using more and more data has come on, but then also the patents and scientific publications related to AI over the last 30 years has advanced significantly as well. And Latin America, unfortunately, has lagged behind other countries when it comes to these journal and conference paper publications. So currently, Latin America only produces 2.83% of all journal and 1.3% of all conference papers published in the areas of artificial intelligence. So some of our goals, of course, is to increase these research opportunities to ensure there are more publications coming from Latin Americans working within the space. And so we decided to develop this program originally back in 2021, as I mentioned in our earlier timeline. And we decided to partner with some key individuals. In this case, we partnered with Tec de Monterrey, which is a university that's actually very broad within Mexico. But we partnered with the Guadalajara campus because we have strong ties to that particular campus. And we know that they have a really good AI innovation development lab there in the Tec de Monterrey Guadalajara campus. And we also partnered with NVIDIA as a provider for hardware for computation. We put out a call for research proposals for compute time as a pilot for this particular program. And we also put out a call for university proposals for hardware and cloud donations. Once we decided that we were going to go with Tec de Monterrey, we decided to launch our preliminary cohort of supercomputer network projects in January of 2023. And they are now ongoing with access to this particular server. And we will be doing a new call for new sites that will receive hardware and cloud donations from us and from our partners, and then of course from there launch continuous cohorts of supercomputer network projects. So this current pilot program consists of us, NVIDIA, the Tecnológico de Monterrey, as I mentioned, and also the government of Jalisco, which is helping to host this particular server for Tecnológico de Monterrey. The initial donation made by NVIDIA was for a DGX A100 system. This essentially can run, it's like a mini server. It can run 8 A100 GPUs in parallel and allow for 8 different teams to access the GPUs, which is very exciting. If you're interested in looking into our call for proposals to maybe prepare for the future calls, you can see the topics of interest and the selection criteria listed as well on our website under this topic. And for those who are interested in applying, you could be academic or industry researchers, AI startups, NGOs, graduate students, or research challenge organizers. So this is really open to the broader community in this space. And so when we selected from our original proposals, this included 8 AI impact research proposals. And we evaluated them in the areas of problem and motivation, intellectual merit, methodology and approach, expected results, potential impact, and the primary investigator's experience. So we're very excited to see what the outcomes will be after a full year of them utilizing this server. And in the meantime, we're also open to more partners for this particular program, whether that be in-kind donations of hardware or cloud infrastructure or monetary sponsorships to help support the program implementation and expansion. And so I'll finally wrap up this presentation with something that is a call to what gets asked of me often. So people are always wondering, well, what's next for the future of artificial intelligence or AGI, and in particular for Latin America or Latin Americans working in the space? And honestly, the answer is it's the same as for AGI in general, right? I think overall, we're moving towards what's considered complex multi-step reasoning. A lot of people right now are working on what's called frontier models. When you think about what is a frontier model, think of something like ChatGPT, right? Something that can essentially learn and generate new data and new content from its learning and from its development. And one of the other areas that are really interesting right now is this combination between generative AI and frontier models and reinforcement learning. So people are starting to realize that they can do things like allow an algorithm to perform self-play and have self-rewarding systems, and also using what's called model-free Q-star learning or multi-step planning, that a model can essentially start thinking about its future moves prior to actually creating its output. There's a lot of look right now as well into evolutionary algorithms, so taking ideas from things like biology and applying them to these new areas of computer science. This generation of synthetic data is also really interesting. People are trying to find more ways to essentially make data where data doesn't exist. So I know that was an issue that was brought up earlier in today's session, that there are people who are essentially, or groups of people who don't have data available about them. Sometimes synthetic data can help fill that gap when needed. And then there's people that are looking at the difference between capabilities research and alignment research. So alignment research is things like ethics research or bias research, aligning with the values of communities or people who are developing the technology. And then of course, what are the capabilities of the technology itself is capabilities research. Reasoning from smaller data sets. So what's the potential to do AI on the edge, or essentially doing compute using smaller amounts of technology? So performing things essentially on what is considered an ARM processor, like in a cell phone or in the cloud. And then of course, solving highly ambiguous precision problems with an unclear reward function, right? So this plays a little bit more into reinforcement learning. If a system doesn't know what its output is supposed to look like, how could it continue to solve problems precisely, even without those answers, or not having a human in the loop to help guide it? So all of these things, what we're moving towards is what I would like to think about as when AI can start doing science itself, right? We've heard a lot about AI doing art now, or AI being creative, or AI solving monotonous problems that we have on the day-to-day. But what I'm truly looking forward to, especially through our investments with our organization, is when AI can start doing science itself and solving really serious problems that we have as part of our human condition. So I'll end there and say, welcome to the Latinx AI community. We would love for you to join our forum, join our programs at our research conferences or at sessions like this. We're happy to co-host with organizations or companies like Flatiron. And if you're interested in following us online, we are on most social media channels, including Twitter, LinkedIn, email, Facebook, also TikTok now. We have a podcast, we have a community blog post. So there are many, many ways to get involved with our community, and we would really love to have you join us. So I'll stop sharing now. And again, thank you very much for the invitation, Flatiron, Patricia. We really appreciate it and happy to answer any questions if there's time. I know I kind of ran over a little bit on time.
Thank you so much, Laura. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments. Laura, if you can, just stick around for 5 minutes if there's any questions, but we have dropped the link in the bio, so please feel free to check out Latinx in AI. Thank you. It was wonderful to just learn about the growth that's currently happening in AI and the innovation that's currently happening in Latin American countries and the importance that is there. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you having you. So next we're going to host our panel discussion. This is the way that we're going to end this event. This panel discussion, The Ethical Horizons in AI, will be led by Angelica Spratly, or Jelly, one of our instructors who was here earlier today. So I will let her lead this conversation. I will put on the spotlight, but we're being joined by multiple speakers, which I will let them introduce themselves. We have Ovidio Reina, we have William Shields, we have Dr. Usha Gingington, we have Alejandro Andrade, who will be here to share more about their thoughts on this topic specifically. So I will let Jelly take the lead, and I'm going to try to put a spotlight on everyone so the speakers can only be the ones highlighted. So give me one moment.
Looks like we came to the front. There we go. All right. Well, as Patricia is getting those spotlights up and going, as she mentioned, I'm so happy to moderate this panel. My name is Angelica Jelly Spratly, a senior data science instructor here at Flatiron School, and happy to lead this discussion about responsible and ethical AI. So before we get started, I'm going to have the panel introduce themselves. I'm probably going to go in order of how I see it on the screen, unless we have a volunteer to go first. But if not, Wes, you are up.
No problem. It's your show, Jelly. We're just living in it here. Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy to be part of this panel today. My name is Wes Shields. I'm a naval officer, career by trade, but then also an AI founder as of late. I am the founder of a company called SynthMinds AI that focuses on education and custom AI integrations. We truly like to think of ourselves as AI explorers. There's no more experts anymore with 4,000 research papers coming out each month. We can only endeavor to explore AI together. And we've worked with Flatiron and in the past, as well as some other enterprise brands like NVIDIA, HP, Kraft Heinz, and really just like giving people that like, oh my God moment when it comes to AI and the possibilities. And help get everyone on the same sheet of music when it comes to AI literacy. And this topic of bias is one of those ones that really can kind of fall to the back burner when everyone's very excited about the productivity gains that can be unlocked, but at what cost? So we really put this at the forefront, and I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Wes, and happy to have you. So next on my screen, go ahead.
Hey guys, my name is Ovidio Reina. I go by Ovi for short. I am a lead cloud engineer, which is a really fancy title for saying that I know how to use the Azure platform really well. Over the last couple of years, I've been working a lot with data scientists and data engineers to improve how they move around on the internet and also comply with regulations across multiple countries. And so that's kind of how I came into this conversation is from more of a practitioner's perspective and not a researcher's perspective.
Thanks, Ovi. Nice to have you as well, Alejandro.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alejandro Andrade. I am a senior data scientist from Pearson. I work at the School Assessment Division in the Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning area. And mostly we do or deal with constructed responses and assessing or scoring them automatically using machine learning models, and lately generating item content using generative AI. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Alejandro. Definitely love the ed tech space, and going to be interested to hear about how you handle bias when content creation for Pearson and in some more areas. All right, Usha.
Thank you, Angelica. I'm here. Thank you for inviting Patricia as well. So, and also the Flatterun School. I'm an ex-McKinsey and an accomplished AA leader for over 20 years of experience in the digital transformation. And then slowly I moved into the last 7 years. I'm working in the 7 to 8 years, mainly on the AI ethics, building not only the customer-centric AI products, but how to build the products responsibly. Because how to, that is very critical today. Having, like we have all the Gen AI products that are out today, we are seeing everything is in motion, right? From the POCs into how to deploying it right now and productizing it. We are in this critical stage where we want to make sure we are building everything, in an ethical way. So currently I lead the AI products for the IEEE Standards Association. So I'm responsible for both the existing and the new products that are on the pipeline related to AI specifically. And we have a flagship product called Certified, and I would be talking about it when we discuss more on that, more on the ethics side of the training. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here and happy to share any of my experiences and also learn from a brilliant lineup of panels.
Thank you all for those amazing introductions. And just a reminder to the audience, this will be recorded and posted. And if you have questions throughout this panel, feel free to drop it in the chat. I'll do my best to look at the chat and insert your questions at an appropriate time. And we also will save time at the end for questions. So I've been hearing this common theme from all four of you is that we have new things coming out every day, new tools, new research, new algorithms. Everything is considered shiny toys, sexy toys, and everybody wants to get that new toy. And they're not really considering some of the ethical implications behind some of these tools and technologies. So I just want to get you all's perspective of what you feel at a general level constitutes as ethical AI or ethical AI use.
Sure, I guess I'll kick it off to keep things in order. To me, it's about having the mindset that all of this is bias. Algorithms are inherently biased from the get-go. I mean, we as humans are inherently biased. Our brain does things to help us identify patterns. You know, if you're looking at pictures of small dogs and then you see a picture of a Great Dane, that's technically a bias to say, oh, that's a little different. You know, these are all baked into our AI algorithms. So at the center of ethical AI, it's something to really create systems that prioritize transparency, fairness, accountability, of course, but also constantly give you the measures of the input and output. Why is it reasoning this way? So you can unpack it, because it's really difficult to mitigate for all of these things from the jump. And I think approaching it from the perspective of this is going to be biased to begin with, and we have to effort to debias these systems is really central to any kind of approach to ethical AI. So completely building the frameworks for monitoring and adjusting accordingly as such.
Yeah,
Also,
definitely love that, Wes. Oh yeah, Ovi, and feel free to jump in. But yes, I just want to reiterate inherent bias. If we think the data and the models have inherent bias, and we have a business and data strategy to address this inherent bias from the get-go, we can start doing ethical AI practices. Yeah, Ovi, chime in.
yeah, to kind of continue on what Wes was talking about with the inherent bias, I think one of my concerns when it comes to AI is privacy, right? Both on the pre part and then the post part, right? Like where we get our data from, where we source our data from is really important, right? Are the people consenting to this, right? Because if you go on like Facebook or Instagram or any Meta products, right? You're feeding data into AI models that you have no word into, right? What happens to that data? You can't ask Meta to just delete that data for you, right? Especially if you're not in the EU. And so privacy is a really big, I think, issue ethically for this. Is where do we get the data from, and then what do we do with that data? And are we telling people? Are we being transparent with people about what we're actually going to do with this data? I think that would be that's my focus on it, right? So that privacy concern aspect of AI.
Oh, I can go next. So, Wes talked about the inherent bias, and Ovi, you talked about the what do we do with the data? Both are very critical, right? So because we all come with inherent bias, and then without data, we can't build models. One thing that I would like to add here is when it comes to what constitutes ethical AI. I look at today how we look at, like, if you're walking into a company where we want to see like what is their corporate culture. Likewise, the building that ethical AI, that is now ethical AI should be should be a part of like a culture, a corporate culture, and not it is something like a checklist that we are checking it off, because that is very critical, so that we know that not only we are building AI models that are customer centric, but we are also building it so that it is not opaque. It's a glass box, and it is accountable, because for any audit checks we can be able to give all the documentation that is needed. And also it's like we cannot say free from biases. There is going to be some amount of bias, some minimal bias that's going to exist, but how we can reduce the bias to the maximum extent. And that's what I look at.
Yeah.
I mean, I think ethical AI starts as a discussion, as a conversation. As you say, recognizing the inherent bias in AI and machine learning models. So when we are approaching these new shiny toys, we approach them as open-minded and a conversation of the uses that we want them, that we want to have for them. So it's a dialogue between the technology and the users.
Yeah, I love all of these points. I heard about having it at the center of your company culture. Ethics should be embedded without the company organization. I've heard about starting off with having discussions at all levels about these new AI tools, especially if there's one you're going to implement within your own organization, and having this diversity of thought. Have these discussions, have a diverse team that's really talking about these AI tools and their concerns and their feedback. I've been hearing great things. So I'm going to kind of combine my second and third question kind of in one, because I know, Wes, you mentioned it starts with a certain level of transparency. So I feel that that is a responsibility, especially of those who create these AI tools, to be transparent about some of its limitations and that inherent bias that you talked about. So how can these AI systems, you think, ensure that they have this transparency? And in connection to that, what are some ethical responsibilities you feel that developers or creators of these AI tools have for this to the society?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it really kind of opens up an emerging need for almost some independent third party or even some government regulatory practices or guidelines for these type of things. To begin, I think you have to have everybody in the company on the same sheet of music. Like AI literacy is really as important now as reading and writing and arithmetic. Understanding how these things work. And that doesn't mean at the level of building a complex neural network or coding these things into existence, but like I don't need to know how to rebuild an engine to become a good driver. I just need to know where the gas goes, how to turn left and right, what the limits are, because this thing is so inherently valuable to me. Like I need to know how to operate it. So that's kind of something that companies everywhere should be deploying for, through their HR, their learning and development departments, getting everyone some AI 101. Hey, here it's going to hallucinate. It's going to but here's what it can also do for you. Here's what it can do if used maliciously. Here's why you can't put company secrets into it. Having those kind of discussions, I think, is quintessential to at least getting on the same page. Also, too, like, I mean, I'm personally such an advocate for experimentation. If decision makers are making these big moves to implement AI systems, one of the first things I always ask companies, I'm like, okay, do you use AI? Do you use ChatGPT or generative AI? All right, well, let's get you trying it. Like let you start to understand some kind of bit of muscle memory of how this stuff works and where it falls short. Without that, I think making these type of informed decisions is infinitely harder because they're invariably fall into, okay, this can be such a productivity gain. So having the baseline literacy, but then you need to go and develop your AI core team, and pretty much everyone in the C-suite now is an AI champion. But it really should be something that big organizations and small should emerge and create some sort of some culture or committee. It should be overly representative. Someone that looks like me can't populate it with a bunch of other folks that also look like me, which is 92% of the developers in AI right now. Like, it's not enough to say, yep, I want equality. You got to go out of your way to amplify and find diverse data sets, voices, to make sure there's representation when you're building these frameworks and tools. Really kind of boils down to, I think, just being as transparent as possible, documenting your decision making, why you're using this model versus another one, being as comprehensive as possible before something is deployed, I think is really, really imperative. We're at a stage now where we don't need these black box models yet. They're not that powerful yet where we need to put the shackles on them, right? Now they need to be open source. So we're making sure that everyone's got a kind of stake and a say in the future.
Yeah, I love that response, Wes. I know on Thursday, I'm going to be giving a talk about data and AI literacy and how to actually establish these data and AI literacy programs within organizations. Because as you mentioned, now data and AI literacy is the new PowerPoint and Microsoft Word skills we used to put on our resumes back in the day. Everybody needs to know it. That's just how popular it is. And having this transparency and somebody to come down as a regulator to kind of put the reins or the guardrails, as we like to call it, for certain AI algorithms on these models, it's very important. And I know, Ovi, that's some of what you do about looking for data rights, data consent, user consent. So can you talk a little bit more about the responsibilities that developers have in making sure that data is protected, data is used with consent, privacy is upheld? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the way that I think about this is with a phrase, people often ask, can AI do this? And I think the question should be, should AI do this? Right? It's like you have to view AI as a tool, right? It's not an end all be all, right? People think of AI as a Swiss Army knife, which is like, I guess the dream, right, is to have like a a general scope AI which can do all the things for you, right? Clean your house, do your homework, do your job as well, and then you can just kind of go on with your life, and we live in a utopia. But the reality is we don't live there, right? The AI that we have now is very tailored to specific tasks, and sometimes the things, like Wes had said, sometimes the AI hallucinates and it just makes random stuff up, right? Or it gets things wrong, which is, I think, another thing that people forget about AI is it can get it wrong, right? You can feed it data and it can still give you the wrong answer. And I think one of the things, all of that comes back to, for me, to kind of go contrary to what Wes is saying, as a practitioner, I think while it is important to know that AI can do things, I think it's also important to realize that sometimes it shouldn't. Sometimes we shouldn't have AI do all of the things for us, right? Especially when it comes to things like handling really critical, important security information for your companies. It shouldn't handle that information, right? And I think that kind of comes back to the core of, when we have privacy concerns or when we have consent concerns with our user data, right? What do we do with that? And what can we do with that? And again, going back to my original phrase, what should we do with that?
Yeah. Ovi, should terms and conditions be 30 pages long?
See, I actually think AI is great for this point, right? AI can be like, hey, AI, give me the summary of these terms and conditions. I think that's a great use for that.
Use AI to give you a summary of the terms and conditions now so that you actually know what you're accepting and agreeing to. That's one of the good uses of AI. And hopefully it doesn't hallucinate and give us an accurate summary. Awesome. Usho or Alejandro, and we all don't have to answer every question, but feel free to try them in. What are some other ethical responsibilities in connection to transparency that you feel developers and tech professionals should have in this AI space?
Alejandro, would you like to go?
You can go
Last
afterwards.
time, I stole the spotlight of yours, so that's why I'm asking you.
We're all sharing the spotlight. Anyone can chime in.
Okay, I can go now. Yeah. So, with respect to the transparency that we're talking about, in that angle, like where what Wes and Ovi shared, putting the guardrails is important. And also, like when we talk about transparency, I would like to give an example where, for instance, let's say like both Angelica and I are requesting for a loan approval, and let's say we both fall on the same salary bracket, and let's assume that once we submit it, and let's say mine got approved and Angelica's got disapproved, then she has every right to know why it got rejected, and I also want to know like why mine got approved. Because let's say we both are friends, and now we are friends, we obviously we will discuss, and then because we are not going to a human agent to find out, and that is where we want to know whether it is able to, this transparency and explainability, it's kind of goes hand in hand. When the model is explainable, then obviously there is transparency. So then it would say like, okay, Angelica might have been if we apply something called counterfactuals, it could say like, okay, Angelica might be behind on the last, she was behind on the last 3 months payments, and that's why her loan got rejected. If she submits her payments on time, utility bills I'm talking about, so then probably she could be able to reapply for the loan, and that would get approved. That convinces the answers for the as a customer. And also it would say like, probably I did something, I might have done the payments on time, and that's why mine got approved. This convinces us not only as friends outside the AI model, but also gives us that the credibility for us to trust the model, right? So that is where the transparency component comes. And I want to add one more thing in here, is like as we integrate these responsibilities into the daily practices, we also ethics training comes into play. When Wes was talking about the AI literacy, and Angelica, you were talking about the AI 101, how it has become so critical right now. That ethics training is something like being at IEEE right now, that regular training sessions on AI ethics, not only it help the teams informed about the what type of guardrails we need to use, or whether we are adopting the EUA Act, currently, if you're in US, about the President Biden's executive order. Not only that, like today with IEEE, we have something called a flagship product called certified. It's a certified training program, which is mainly for it provides a comprehensive education on how to assess the ethicality of your AI systems. So we have right from large tech companies up until like universities, or if it is startups, they come to us saying like, okay, we would like to coach our teams so that we want to make sure they know how to assess the ethicality of the AI systems. So that is, it's not about the technical assessment, what a technical lead and their team does. It's about the ethicality of the entire AI system, so that specifying, okay, these are the things, you did not do a disparity ratio here. Probably when you do this, you should be able to do the bias metrics properly. So giving all those checklists, so that that helps not only the audit check for the audit checks, but also the, you know, the companies don't have to succumb to the ethical pitfalls. So I will add a link to that, but wanted to mention about how certified is, it's kind of, it's not, I'm trying to sell it here, but mentioning like, because IEEE, when it has that IEEE blessing, people wants to use how that ethical assessment training is done. So that helps us to do the transparency part really well, in all the organizations, big or small.
Yeah, and that's very important because it boils down to you need to audit your data, you need to audit your AI models. So what tools and or humans can you utilize, preferably both tools and humans, where you can audit your AI tools and AI models for biases and things of that nature? What is the appropriate fairness metrics to use for your particular AI models? So that is definitely a good point that you bring, Usha. Now, Alejandra, I want to ask you more specifically, especially working at Pearson, a time where you had to consider ethics in a machine learning model that you developed or in acquiring data that you needed for a particular project. But can you think of a pivotal moment in your career where you really considered ethics in your decision making for a data or AI project?
I think there are several times. Sorry, I was thinking about the transparency. If I
Yeah,
come
feel
back,
free to comment on that first so we can circle back. But yeah, transparency.
yeah, and let me circle back to
Yeah.
your question about the example. But I think that I think it is becoming really important for businesses to be very transparent with their models and their AI use, because it's part of the, like, how to call it, competitiveness. If you are bidding for a project and you cannot show why you're getting certain outcomes, if you're not able to explain them or explain what part of your outcomes come from generative AI, that's going to decrease, I guess, your chances of obtaining, I guess, a good contract if what you're bidding for is also ethical, right? So it's got to be part of the business itself, considering all the ethical implications of the models and the generative AI. So I wanted to mention that, and let me come back then to your question about a pivotal moment. And I think Pearson, as well as many other industries, has had the rush to really start including AI in many of the processes that are happening across all the organization. And like we could feel the need from the higher ups, the executives, pushing for more and more use of these AIs. But fortunately, there is also a lot of guardrails in terms of legal issues, in particular in the school assessments division that I work in. There is a lot of consideration about PII from students, because these are texts that students are constructing freely. So they might include information about their lives, about people in their lives. So it's something that we cannot readily use until relatively recent, where the company was able to guarantee that all the language models were contained within kind of like its own infrastructure, that the data wasn't going to go freely to OpenAI or other companies. It was just going to stay with us. So I think it's been a lot of excitement around it, but it's been also, it took also a long time to get all the approval and kind of like the infrastructure set up for that privacy aspect.
Yeah, so you're talking a lot about pressure from senior leadership and competition to want to adopt these tools and technology really quickly so that they don't lose out on stakeholders or obtaining contracts, and how this is not a quick process necessarily when you want to check all of these ethical boxes. That takes time, that takes going to, understanding the legalities and the regulations behind it. As you mentioned, it may cost companies increased costs because they may not can host their data on a public cloud. They may need a more private cloud, and that takes time to implement. And I know OV has all of this about cloud infrastructure and maybe people moving from public to private clouds to kind of have this more ethical consideration behind some of their data that they're storing, as well as some of the models that they deploy. So OV, can you talk quickly about that off of Alejandro, about this whole infrastructure timeline and infrastructure costs when we really want to consider ethical use of data and ethical use of models? Oh, so Ovi, you're on mute.
Yes, thank you. So as you might guess, it's kind of a complicated discussion because there's a lot of moving parts, especially when it comes to like building infrastructure for data pipelines or data kind of incubation areas. In my specific company, I work at a company called Insulet. They're a biotech company that works specifically in making portable insulin pumps that you just kind of put on your arm. So it's super cool, super helpful for people with type 2 diabetes. And so we're kind of working on a project. I'm wrapping up a project right now that's kind of tying up all of these things. And so the project itself is taking all of our users' data across the 5 different countries all across the globe with all different legalities, and centralizing all of that data in one area in a massive data lake where we can then use our algorithms, our data scientists and data engineers can then use that data to present our C-level people with business decisions and be like, hey, here's 35 terabytes of data that says we should go left instead of right. And it is it's a really tricky thing infrastructure-wise because there's so many different regulations that we have to put in place from all of these different countries. There's different privacy concerns. There's different consent involved as well, because some countries allow you to auto consent people in, and some countries say you have to explicitly get the consent in, right? And how does that all work out in this process as well? And so it's been 4.5 years that they've been working on this project. I came in last year to help them wrap it up. We're on the regulatory phase right now, so hopefully we pass that in the next month or two, and then we can push this forward. But I think on the infrastructure side, the thing that especially if you're like an infrastructure engineer who's working with data scientists or C-level executives or a mix of people, I think it's important to always ask, yeah, we can probably do this, but should we do this, right? Is this something, again, is this an ethical thing to do with this data, right? Are we anonymizing it? Are we using people's actual like social security numbers in this? Like, does that actually matter to the data, right? Right. That especially like there's a crap ton of data in the world, and not all of it is actually needed to do the things that we need it to do, right? So how do we prune it, right? How do we do this in such a way that we get what we want with the least amount of infringement on people?
Yeah. I definitely love that, Oven. You said 4.5 years. And I think when I'm training new data scientists or data engineers in the field, and they're like, what, a neural net isn't trained in a day? was like, no, a lot of these things in academic settings, we go real quick. We may use a Titanic data set, but in the real world, as you said, that business, that data strategy, that regulatory piece, that deployment piece, it takes time. And sometimes we can't just adopt the next new toy because that's going to take another 4 years. And so, Wes, speaking as an entrepreneur, can you talk about pretty much the timeline that you had to undergo to kind of consider all of these ethical considerations, even working with clients, and about a pivotal moment in starting up your own company about using data in an ethical way, or acquiring clients in an ethical way, or how to create these AI models? Can you talk about that?
Sure. I think it's Avi said a really great thing, like, just because this data is available to us, does it even need to be considered in what we're trying to achieve? In fact, a lot of times it should be completely anonymized or taken out of it. A social security number in and of itself, it's not an integer, it's just an identifiable number. It's the same as someone's name. It doesn't mean anything in terms of the relationships you can glean from it. So why should it even be considered in a data set that, if it leaks, if it's hacked or something like that, can cause a significant amount of damage to the companies and also potentially all of those individuals? I think one of the things that is really I'm thinking back to a specific instance where I was appreciative. We had a client where they actually engaged us to help evaluate their model, and it was for a HR hiring type practice, and kind of quickly became, there's so many good checks in data science to quickly identify statistical and computational bias. So it's like, there's so many tests that you can go right out the gate to identify, all right, there's some heteroscedasticity, I'm overfitting here. There's that part tends to be easy, and you can almost terse that out in any sort of pre-design phase. But then there's the systemic bias part that really can only get broken down from a lot of thoughtful intent going into that design and development phase. Where do we get our data from? Is the data inherently biased? How are we kind of adjusting from those characteristics? But what this situation kind of like taught me is, more than likely, it's the human biases that end up causing these potentially bigger issues. In this one instance, we're doing all these statistical and computational checks, trying to really unpack all these biases, looking at their data sets. And it turns out they didn't put the name as protected class. So this particular model was also hooked up to their internal database. So we identified that they had 3 people that had the first name of John that had left or been fired in the last month, right? So when a new applicant's resume that also had John, it was discriminated against and said, this person's more likely to leave the company in like a year or 2. And like that in and of itself is just like, oh, well, that's so simple to understand. But like to the computer, it's just doing its job. It's just finding those correlations. And that is inherently a human bias, which is just that error in systematic thinking that we're all prone to, but really kind of only displays itself, after you start using it, after you start testing. And if you're not rigorously evaluating these things, you could have a system that is unfairly biasing against Johns, or hiring. I think there was an article too a few months back, made me laugh. It identified, some other system like this identified applicants with the name Trevor as the perfect applicant. So if a Trevor came through, they were hired. So yeah, that was one that kind of stuck out to me, where now I always kind of approach this from like the human bias stuff kind of first. Like, we have tests for these other ones. These are the harder ones to terse out and find.
Yeah, it's like, look for all the Johns in the data. No, but
Yeah,
yes,
you're not
good
gonna
point.
think that.
It's these things that we think would be like so simple, but as
Yep.
you mentioned, we have these unconscious biases that we carry around. I remember me as a graduate student for data analytics, I asked one of my advisors, should I put that I volunteered for the Black Student Union? Should I put that I went to a historically Black university and college? Because I was really afraid of these applicant tracking systems really seeing that I have put Black so much on my resume that they may just immediately deny me. So when I was first being taught about data, these are some things that I'm like, oh no, how much should I disclose about myself? Because I don't want to get an immediate, as Usha said in her example, disapproval because I have this keyword Black. And like you said, different studies with when we have a lot of Afrocentric names, and I'm bringing this up because this is a Juneteenth symposium, that if I do have a name that's representative of a certain culture, and I actually experienced this recently when it comes to Indian American names. Like I could not generate proper Indian American names to train my natural language processing model on. It was just a nightmare, right? By using a package in Python called Faker. It does not generate proper cultural names. But yeah, so these are the things that we have to think about, as you said. And sometimes the simple tools, such as those t-tests, those, like you said, metric comparisons, those correlations, we overlook those because we quickly want to get to the model. And sometimes the answer is in just simple statistics done right that we actually outsource to some of these third-party contractors now and keep people like us in business. But great point. Any other insights about this?
Couple of things I wanted to add. How Wes was mentioning about AI is doing its job, and how what kind of a couple of things that comes to my mind is like how we are how we can invest in this, how to preserve this privacy technology. So, for instance, we have to keep that human in the loop, right? Because AI is doing its job, but we know, like, why, if there is a new applicant as John or Jane that comes in, then why that is being rejected by the ATS, right? So, and we need to be so careful and put so much effort in order to submit a resume. And if it gets an instant rejection, many times I've applied for some job, and within a minute or so, I will get an instant rejection. That is automatic, obviously not coming from a human, but it's obviously coming from an ATS, right? So the application tracking system. So what I would like to add a couple of things here is not only ensuring we are following that compliance with the regulatory standards and stuff, but making sure the human in the loop is so critical, and how we can invest in that emerging privacy preserving technologies. Like one example that I would like to give is like that homomorphic encryption that we do, where the data is which Ovi was talking about, how we can follow these GDPR laws to making sure that data is not compromised, the data to remain encrypted while we are processing using the AI models. So this way, we are not exposing any data, any PAI information, so that we are trying to stick to the because we are playing with the real data set, right? Especially think of the healthcare, where we have the HIPAA regulations and everything, but still the data is highly sensitive, the fintech and everything that you take. So how we can make sure whoever is behind it, the data scientists, the all those people, this goes into the next I think, like Angelica would be talking about more about accountability, I think. So where this, how the researchers can use this AI model training, but making sure we are not compromising that privacy data when
Yes,
it
and
comes to data.
Usha, you said encryption, and as Flatiron School, how we have cybersecurity programs in data science programs. And I love to bridge that gap between cybersecurity and data science, because there is a lot of benefits between both of these fields working together. As you mentioned, these hashing algorithms, proper encryption, only decrypting when necessary. How can we do these multi-factor authentication practices? All of these things kind of fall in line with data between both of these fields. So I love that this ethical consideration spans across multiple technical roles, not just data scientists, not just software developers, but cybersecurity analysts, everyone. And speaking of accountability, let's go ahead and talk about it, because I know that I'm skipping across questions, but I know that I love the conversation that we have. And I'm going to pose more of a radical use case or thing that I normally ask my students. So we know that this whole concept of the moral dilemma with self-driving cars came about. So when we wanted to create these self-driving algorithms, we did a survey where people can opt in to take the survey. Of course, no response and response bias, but whatever. We won't touch that. But pretty much they got about 40 or 50 million responses. And they've asked questions like, if you had to choose your self-driving car to hit your grandma or hit a 5-year-old child, which one would you choose? And they realized that in some non-Western countries, a lot of them said child, because how they view the family structure, how they respect their elders, things of that nature, they hold it more dear to their heart. They have generational families in the same households, etc. Whereas more Western culture said, no, bye-bye grandma. And then they're talking about, well, if I hit either or, which one do I choose? And once I make a decision like this, who is held accountable? Is it the insurance that I put on the car? Is it the creator of the algorithm in the first place? Is it the person who decided to buy the car? So when these AI models or systems fail or cause harm to society, who do you think should be held accountable? And I'll let anyone go first in answering this question for the panel.
Tesla.
Albie, we recorded.
Like, I'll just throw in here too, because this obviously is a debate that we are all going to need to reckon and come to terms with as a society, like as governments, as humans. But let's not discount the fact that like a lot of these tools can also maybe be our salvation. I mean, there's a company right now that takes generative AI, takes insurance accident reports, overlays it with Google Map data, recreates the accident scene that happened, and then does it in every hour of the day, different weather conditions, and actually trains computer vision models for self-driving based on real world reports in ways that we could never feed it with real and authentic data. I mean, I happen to think, Usha, you were just talking a little bit about some of the privacy concerns and the encryption, well, hey, LLMs are fantastic at generating synthetic data. We can create, differential privacy when we have these models that we add the controlled noise to, and it really kind of ends up protecting some of these users and increasing the the diversity and usability of some of these things. So who's to blame? Great question. I think again we're going to have to come to terms with all of that. I think the way you put the blame not on your company is by having a robust and even overtly having third-party auditors come in and then showcase the facts about why it led to this point. But it's I often follow this with bated breath because there's no precedence. It's very much we are all in the Wild West here. But I think the one part of this that just maybe gets forgotten is like, oh, these tools can actually really help us solve this. Like, let's not forget about that. Like, we don't need to just figure this out on our own.
So blame Tesla and then blame the vendors that work for you. So we got two things. So go ahead, Obi.
To give a more serious answer, I think that the responsibility falls on governments, either local, state, or federal governments, right? Across. I think I think this is something that people forget. Like in the 80s, in the US specifically, it was not illegal to drink and drive. In the 70s, it was not illegal to not wear seatbelts as a driver or a passenger. And I think people expect AI, especially in this situation of like automated driving, to come in and like automatically solve everything all at once, no problems ever again. And that's just not how reality works, right? Like, unfortunately, reality is that crap happens as time moves on, right? And even though statistics will show that automated cars are significantly safer than a human behind the wheel, that does not mean that accidents won't happen, right? And so even in this situation, this hypothetical situation of you hit your grandmother, you hit a 5-year-old, how often have any of you actually had that situation in real life, right? It is such a minuscule thing that happens, and yet there are regulations for this, right? Like if you are in a car accident, then the responsibility would then fall on your insurance to pay out for the damages and blah blah blah. And that all of that came from regulations, which came from experiences previously where those regulations were not in place. And so I think something to keep in mind about this is this will not be a one and done thing with AI when it comes to, especially with like automated driving, but just any industry. It's not a one and done. It is something that we're going to implement. It's going to mess up somewhere, and then we just fine tune it as we keep going. And I think that's something that people have an unrealistic expectation of AI when it comes to this.
Oh, totally. Just think of the innovation though that's come about since a seatbelt regulation. How much additional safety stuff has been invented? I don't think people realize that. Like a lot of times, a little regulation's good because of the positive change that can come as a result.
So yeah, if you remember that incident that happened in Tempe in Arizona, where related to the autonomous vehicle, is it who is accountable here? Is that the end user, who the driver behind the wheel, who ignored certain operational guidelines, or is it the developer who had some design flaw because the victim who was wearing a black hood, because the bounding box could not recognize it in the dark avenue, so it's thought like that's a design flaw caused by the accident, right? So are we blaming the developer, or are we blaming the end user? But at the end of the day, it's a holistic approach we need to take, because it's how we can while not we can say like based on this is directly accountable for these specific incidents, but we need to make sure how we can inculcate this, because we need to make sure we inculcate this to the entire staff, the team, the developers, the company, that also need to have that top down approach to make sure how they are putting in that safety measures, the guardrails, and then of course whoever is behind the wheel, and and as well as the regulatory component, that we need to make sure that it is not it's not made as like it's an insufficient to prevent the scenario.
Can I just say that it's everyone's responsibility? It's kind of like, yeah, what is the saying I'm looking for? Like splitting the baby. Kind of like we are all responsible for the models that we develop, that we create, that we put in the market, that people use, because they also decide that they're going to use those models, and governments and institutions to regulate them. But Ovi brought a point that I think is really interesting. I think Wes also touched on these models might not always be right. Like there is a reason why we evaluate those, and as says the trade-off between what's worse, the false positives or the false negatives. Is it more important to accept when the model might be saying that there is a pedestrian on the road than what is not? Like that would be a false positive because maybe there is no pedestrian there. Then a false negative where it didn't see the pedestrian because it was wearing a hood. So all those metrics can also help us understand the models and the limitations of the models, because no model is going to be ever perfect.
Yeah, because humans aren't perfect. And no one said that we can put that actual car on a stand in a court and actually charge the car and make the car pay, because there has to be a human involved in the loop, as Usha said earlier. So I want to ask that as our last question for the panel before we open it up to the floor for questions. But especially here at Flatiron School, where we're training people to become tech professionals, data scientists, cybersecurity analysts, developers, etc. People worry that AI will completely wipe out jobs. And I know that you have probably participated in this discussion quite a lot, where people say AI won't replace you, but someone who knows how to use AI will. So can you speak on this notion about how the job market will change or has been changing as a result of AI being on the scene?
Yeah, go ahead, Avi.
Okay, so this is interesting because I have a good friend of mine. She works at GitHub developing Copilot, which is marketed as like for developers to like help them code faster and yada yada. And it's really interesting because I've talked to her about, I'm like, who is this useful for? Like, what developers is this useful for, right? Is this useful for like beginner developers? Is this useful for like expert developers? And she's like, no, this is usually very useful for like intermediate developers, right? People who have like a couple years of experience, but they're not like experts in whatever language or whatever they're doing. And she's like, that they tend to find the most use out of this because beginners don't know what the hell they need. And experts are like, I can just do it faster. Like, why would I need AI to do it for me? And so it's this interesting like middle ground where people who know enough to know this is right or wrong, but not so much experience that they're like, I don't need this because I can just do it myself faster. It's this odd middle ground for to help developers, but I don't personally, I don't think that AI will ever overtake software engineers, software developer, data scientists. I don't think it'll ever take their jobs. I think it'll augment their jobs, right? I think my hope is that it'll automate a lot of the boring stuff that we have to do, right? And like it'll do a lot of like, because for me, a lot of the trivial stuff, the things that I think are trivial are like, oh, I need to double check that all the security parameters are correct. I have an AI that'll do that for me. I have an automation account that'll just go and double check that everything that we have deployed is in fact compliant with our security policy, right? And I think in that sense, augment what we do and hopefully make it easier. But I don't think it will ever fully replace developers.
I mean, I was just going to add on, like, make no mistake, AI is coming for tasks. It's coming for your tasks, So like your job's going to be fine, but like, guess what? Sorry, you're not taking minutes at a meeting anymore. Like, why are we doing that? Now we can do this and all get on the same sheet of music. So like, I think so much gets wrapped up into the smaller part of this reality, which is, yes, there is the revenues and the costs discussion that invariably there will be shifts. In some industries where you're talking about like customer operations, software development, content creation, research and development, they're going to feel it a little more. I don't think the guy changing, the oil under the car in your car is probably not feeling the titanic shift of AI just yet, So yes, there is that piece, and you could look at studies. It's probably $2 to $3 trillion worth of economic, adjustments just from this. But the thing that I kind of try to emphasize and really am more excited about is like, all right, well, so say I can offload 60% of my tasks to this AI to do all your data cleaning, which I'm sure Avi's all about. When he's making that data lake. No, it's data scientists are janitors, above and beyond, before anything else, data janitors. But like, if you can offload 60% of your tasks to these AI tools and agentic systems, now you have 60% more time to be creative, to be more productive, to gain more market share, to earn more business. That's orders of magnitude bigger and better and more exciting. I think I saw a McKinsey report at one point said 16 to 17 trillion dollars will get unlocked annually when in some of these industries where you have this new time, and And also too, like there are measurable second and third order benefits of these things. You know, we're going to have chatbots doing all the level 1 customer service, you know, either via a voice model or just, you know, on your, you know, website doing your, you know, travel itinerary changes. It's all going to be AI. And that's a good thing, because when they've actually measured this, like I think they measured this at that company HelloFresh. They do the meal deliveries, chatbots for the longest time. Of course, you know, ticket times are better, you know, customer satisfaction increased. Yeah, of course that's going to happen. But they actually found lower employee turnover, more employee job satisfaction, because the customer service agents are actually helping real people with real problems, leveraging their emotional intelligence and critical thinking, stuff that AI is not good at right now. And, you know, like that's a benefit to me, you know? Yeah, there might be less customer service agents potentially, and that's going to be a shakeup, but there's a lot more that's going to be unlocked. I mean, like I've got a 5-year-old daughter. I don't think the job she's going to end up doing even exists yet, you know? So like that to me is, I try not to get caught up in that fear narrative. It's so prevalent, and it's just like, you know, we heard this when computers came out from the banking industry. We heard this from the photography industry when Photoshop came out. And what happened? You have an entire new diverse set of industries that exploded. So here we are again.
Yeah, I love that optimism that you give people. And I'd say the same thing. Back in the day, there were people building outhouses, and then, you know, we had plumbers. So even if some jobs go away, new jobs always open up. That's just how we work as an innovative society. Any other thoughts about this?
So since we are talking, oh, go ahead, Ovi.
Go ahead, Lisa. Go ahead. I'll jump in after you.
Yeah, thank you. Since we are talking about, you know, how this transition into that, where, you know, AI is, we are using to enhance the productivity of the employee, so that, you know, we are trying to automate the task rather than replacing roles outright, right? So here, since there are also students here, I wanted to, in the audience, I wanted to emphasize, like, if you are trying to look for upskilling, let's say a majority of the students here are into cybersecurity, in one way or the other, you are going to use leverage AI in on the job. So make sure you're upskilling for what you would like to do, how this in the cybersecurity you're going to utilize AI. Not because, let's say you're joining a company, not because everyone is taking some AI course, you need to take it and show that you have an AI, that you are, you know, we are AI literate. You know, we have to be AI ready, or else we will become, you know, what to say, not to become. Earlier, we used to say, like, if we don't keep abreast with the technology, we will become technologically obsolete. Now, today, if you don't keep up with the AI, because there is something that happens every day. I can't learn everything about AI, new technology, but what is your passion, what your passion report, what is the role that you're doing in a company. Try to work on that part and try to leverage your training programs that are out there in the company, and utilize that course, and don't take some random course. That is something that I tell when I mentor my junior colleagues, saying, like, take what is appropriate that you can incorporate it in applying to your work, so that that is beneficial to you, so that that helps you. And that is something that I wanted to bring it up here, because that way, you know that you're applying AI, but you know how to do it as well. So for instance, I would like to give an example where, in order to for onboarding, one of the HR person had to keep sending an personalized email to people when they are bringing people onboarding and trying to ask them to take some amount of training. So I told her, you can automate these tasks so that you could be able to, you can focus better on something else. And she automated the task using ServiceNow, but at the same time, she was leveraging AI, so that was able to automate it. So it just sent it to, let's say, hi Usha, welcome on board, and then providing all the information. So she doesn't have to keep sending email, because she was sending so many emails every week but she not only automated the task using AI and how she could be able to do that, but she was also able to learn a tool. So that is where I would say, like, be laser focused on what you are trying to learn from that bunch of training programs that are offered in your company, and utilize that, and then try to apply that. That would gel with your work, what you're doing.
Okay,
I will
so
stop
become
here.
AI ready, then AI literate, then AI fluent.
Yes, exactly.
Got it. Go ahead, Ovi. I know you want to add something.
Yeah, so two things. I think to Wes's point, like, I think AI will be a massive societal shift, the same way that the industrial industry was, right? Industrial revolution was, right? Where we went from being farmers to being factory workers, and then that created a bunch of jobs that never existed before, right? And then we had the second industrial revolution, which created other jobs that didn't exist before. And so I think AI will do the same thing, where it will create jobs that we can't even fathom of right now, because we need people to maintain AI. We need people to develop AI. We need people to regulate AI. We need people to keep AI in check, right? And I think that that's something that is, I think it's mostly exciting. I worry, like societally, one of the things that I've noticed is as new technologies get introduced, productivity increases, but workload doesn't. And I hope that's one of the things that, specifically for the younger people on here, when you guys go to new jobs, right, and you have like, oh yeah, we have all these productivity tools that help you be more productive, don't let that also increase your workload, right? The idea of AI should be to decrease your workload, right? But you have the same productivity, so that then you have more time to do things like Wes was saying, to engage and be creative with what you do with your work, right? Come up and be innovative, because now you don't have to spend 60% of your time doing BS tasks that are important, but they just take up a bunch of little small time. And I think that's one of the things that I worry about with this really the societal shift in AI, is that we're going to forget that, yes, AI will make our lives easier, but it shouldn't also increase our workload, right? They should stay about the same. AI will just take care of the boring stuff for us.
Yeah, I would like to add that the pace of the innovation is also important. And it's not only that we need to acquire new skills, is that we need to be lifelong learners. Like, we need to keep learning and relearning all these new skills. It's just like, it's going to be part of everyone's attitude towards jobs, toward life. Like, is I need to learn something new every month, every year. Like, in my career, I have had to take so many additional courses and specializations and certifications just to keep up to date with the pace, and it's only going to increase.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. I'm waiting for AI to do my laundry, clean my house, so then I can do the fun
That's
stuff.
the one. That's the one.
So
When
I
it
can do the
falls,
fun stuff like critical and creative thinking, right? I
Right.
don't really necessarily need it to generate a cool image for me. I can do that if it just does the garbage and everything else. Awesome. And so let's give a round of applause with some emojis in the chat, some thank you, some appreciation for our amazing panel that have volunteered their time to speak with us today and give us such meaningful insights about ethical uses of AI, the journey or the trajectory that AI is going. It has been amazing speaking to each and every last one of you. So 15 to 30 seconds. Any closing statements, encouragement, remarks, famous quotes that any of you want to give?
I'll just chime in that as much as you can emphasize in your own explorations of AI, stay humble. Like Alejandro said, we gotta learn something new every hour. It feels like in the land of AI. If you encounter anyone that's an AI expert, I say you've already let it pass you by. You got to stay humble. You got to stay hungry. Keep learning. And then also, like, this, I don't think this is a tool. Like, yes, AI can perform functions, but like, this is a behavioral shift we're kind of all engaging. And then organizations should think of that as well when it comes to AI. Hey, it's not like I'm going to get you some PowerPoint training. This is, hey, an entire new way of solving problems and approaching different challenges, because you have this little pal that can do pretty much anything, you know, if you set it up correctly, and you can offload that execution to. So, you know, a great framework to think of this.
I think to echo Wes's statement, I remember back when I was starting as a software engineer, and it is really overwhelming to have 17 languages being thrown at you and being like, oh, you need to know Java, you need to know Python, you need to know, you know, this Perl thing, and you don't have to know all of it. You don't. Like, it is immeasurably more than you can ever conceptualize at one time, and that's okay, right? You're not expected to master the entirety of everything that is AI. Just work on whatever it is that you are interested in, or that you think will be best for getting you that first job or that second job, and then go from there, right? Like, you have to get in the door first before you can, you know, move up from there. So don't try not to be overwhelmed with the massiveness of it, and just try and go on it day by day.
Start something small and do what is what you need for the work that you want to accomplish. And we need to remember that responsible AI is a shared responsibility, right? So how we can make it it's everyone's responsibility. So because we make the machines intelligent, it is not the other way. So, and as long as we know how to do it, we can be responsible enough to keep innovating in this area.
Just to, my parting thoughts is be skeptical, like with other people's, as well as AI. Be skeptical and try it for yourself and make your own decision.
Awesome. And I would just say, be a good person. That's an underrated professional development skill. If you're a good person, you're going to have good things happen personally and professionally. So be good people. I want to thank the panel for coming out. I'm going to pass it real quickly back over to Patricia. There's a feedback survey in the chat. We would love your feedback about this event overall. And Patricia, I'll let you close us out.
Yes, well, thank you so much, everyone, for sticking along. It's been a long day, but I'm so glad that you guys joined us for Juneteenth for Algorithmic Liberation. I hope that today you guys just enjoyed learning about the power of artificial intelligence and just the importance that it has to just create ethical AI. If you enjoy this event or you have any feedback, we have dropped a survey in the comments. Just let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want to see back, what you don't. And if you want to check out our events, please check them out at flatironschool.com/events. Jelly dropped everyone's LinkedIn's, and I will be sharing this with attendees as well. And as mentioned, this was recorded. So once this is edited, it will be shared with all participants. So thank you so much. And I hope you guys have a
Patricia, use AI to get rid of my blemishes in the edit.
I will, don't worry. We will focus on that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.